I would guess that 80% of website accessibility litigation settles for between $8,000 and $17,000. On the extreme ends, $3,000 on the low side, and then $23,000 on the higher side. But the asterisk being, if the entity defending against litigation is well known, has a larger size, larger revenue amounts, then that number is likely to go up. So here's what I think influences these amounts. As I just talked about, the size of the entity, so how much you can afford to pay. The firm that's settling. If the firm is smaller, less experienced, reluctant to file in court, that firm is likely going to settle for a lesser amount than a firm that is experienced, files regularly, and they've negotiated against entities of all size. They're going to be more inflexible when it comes to lowering the settlement amount. Also, the stage of the settlement. If it's after a demand letter is sent, then that likely will keep the dollar amount lower. However, if a complaint is filed, if motions are filed, then I think that's going to lend to a higher settlement amount. So those are the factors that go into the actual settlement amount. But what's very, very important is that it's not just the settlement amount that is going to cost the defendant. It's also the stipulations of the settlement. So what I have seen are audits that are mandated, user testing that is mandated, changes to the website that are mandated, the hiring of a third-party consultant. All of these things can be included into a settlement, and often are, but they are not some. These are terms that can increase the cost for the defendant, and I don't think everyone quite appreciates how much the cost can be. So, let's say an audit is part of the settlement. Well, that's fine, but if you have an audit that is done quarterly, that can be quite expensive and also unnecessary. And the same goes for user testing. User testing can be extremely expensive, and if it's done quarterly, that's even more expensive. And it's likely quarterly is so frequent that it may not even help to have it done that often. It really depends on the situation, but this is just to give you context as to terms that you could potentially be agreeing to. So you really have to pay attention to what it is and how often you're doing it, and then whether you have to report in to the plaintiff's law firm. I mean, that's another consideration. So there are a lot of things to think about, and these are things that you will need to go over with your counsel. But the purpose of this video is to let you know, one, generally what type of cost I have seen based on experience, but two, the other side of this, where we're going beyond the dollar amount of the settlement and into the settlement terms. And when you look at those settlement terms, they can easily end up exceeding the cost of the actual settlement.